26. June 1963. Rudolf Wild-Platz, West Berlin. A black German clerk named Karl writes a line he will not speak aloud. The Americans talk of freedom. In this city I am both German and foreign, both victim and symbol. He stands in a crowd that roars for Kennedy. He writes in a pocket notebook. Short lines. He hears the words. He hears the cheers. He hears the echo against the wall. He thinks of paperwork. The camera that never blinks does not linger on him. It catches flags, faces, the white-gloved salute of police, the open convertible. A city on display to the world. A promise shouted over concrete. Ich bin ein Berliner. A performance and a prayer. Karl writes what cannot be applauded, that his body is an exhibit, that in West Berlin his skin proves democracy to foreign eyes and marks him to many neighbors as something that does not belong. He writes because it is safer than speaking. The narration moves backward, because the mathematics of this moment began with rubble. 8 May 1945. Berlin, Wedding District. A tenant ledger recovered from a collapsed building lists. Dead, missing, evacuated. Names with red pencil crosses. Rooms with no windows. Basements flooded. A landlord's hand signs for 3 walls and a roof that no longer exist. Rubble landscapes, they called them later. But first, they were just the city you had to move through. Stones, joists, rebar, the smell of wet ash and open cellars, brick dust in your throat, the Trümmerfrauen, the women in headscarves with picks and gloves, lifting, sorting, stacking. Berlin, Dresden, Munich, Hanover, women on the ruins because the men were dead or captive or hiding. They made bricks from old bricks, measured hope in wheelbarrows. Food was arithmetic. Calories tallied, not tasted. The city had its ration cards and its categories, its numbers written by the offices that still ran. The American occupation reports speak of severe caloric deficiency among the non-privileged classes. Privilege meant access to the black market or a uniform or an office desk. In the hunger winter of 1946-47, adults in Berlin received around 1,000 to 500 calories per day on paper. On the plate, it could be less. The mathematics of hunger was not abstract. It was the difference between legs that could climb 3 flights of stairs and legs that could not. A British officer, in a January 1947 report from the Control Commission, writes, "People stand in queues like fence posts. They talk little. They look past you." He notes that cigarettes are worth more than money. 12 cigarettes for a kilo of potatoes, 2 for a tram ride if the conductor is hungry. There are accounts of men tearing ration cards in half to make them last on the page, not in the kitchen. There is an American IAAED and temple jars of sugar hidden under floorboards in Charlottenburg. There are women who exchange blankets for butter. The commodities of post-war life did not respect state borders. They respected desperation. The black market was its own republic. Curfews. Compliance. A Soviet commissar at the head of the front enters Berlin in late April and pins an order to the door of a ruined cafe. No Germans in the streets after 2,000 hours, no gatherings, surrender weapons. People fear retribution. There are rapes, there are break-ins, there are rumors of worse. The Allied military government publishes proclamations about law and order in the zones. In Berlin, where the zones overlap like the broken ribs of a barrel, 4 flags command at once and seldom in concert. People learn the new arithmetic, who you can ask for help, who you must avoid, how to say, "I did not know," in several accents. 15 May 1945. In a notebook, a woman named Erica, 20 and already a widow, writes, "They say the Russians will not stay. The British are gentlemen, the Americans smiled. I do not sleep." She will later tell a Red Cross interviewer, that her fiancé wears no uniform because he never returned. She will meet an American soldier in the Schwarzer Markt near Alexanderplatz when the 4 sectors are still lines on paper. He will buy her eggs with cigarettes. He will ask her to meet again. She will not call it love, she will call it survival. Between May and September 1945, papers are filled with proclamations about denazification, Potsdam, directives, the need to remove Nazis from office. The mathematics of guilt begins with a question: who is a Nazi? The answer is a file. You fill out a questionnaire. 40 to 120 questions depending on the zone. Did you join the NSDAP, the SA, the SS, the Hitler Youth? Did you donate? Did you attend this course or that meeting? Did you sign letters? Did you supervise the deportation list or just type it? Occupation authorities require honesty. Germans require amnesia. The Sprüchkammer hearings in the Western zones are dockets more than trials. There are 5 categories: Hauptschuldige, major offenders; Belastet offenders; Minder Belastet, lesser offenders; Mitlaufer followers; Entlasteter, exonerated. The mathematics of the judgments is recorded in the archival tables of the Länder. In the American zone, millions of questionnaires, hundreds of thousands processed, a handful of thousands processed, a handful of thousands penalized beyond fines and temporary disqualifications. Major offenders are few. Followers are many. Exonerated are many. The need for stability is a quiet judge. The economy demands experienced hands. The files begin to thicken with affidavits called Persilscheiner, whiteners, letters from neighbors asserting, "He was never political. He warned me. He protected us." The system wants republics more than confessions. The mathematics is not only guilt, it is labor supply. In the Soviet zone, denazification takes a different form: land reform, confiscations, internment. S-MAD orders purge former Nazis from teaching, administration, media. Party anti-fascism becomes a certificate. The East German state will later inscribe anti-fascist at its founding, and in that inscription will bury personal confessions and build a collective innocence. Files in the Bundesarchiv record the numbers. They also record how files get closed. Displacement is a river without bridges. In 1945 and 1946, trains arrive in western towns carrying Germans from Königsberg, Pomerania, the Sudetenland, Silesia. 12 to 14 million. Some with a suitcase, many with less. The arithmetic of rooms becomes brutal. A municipal housing office memo from Göttingen, October 1946. Population increased by 25% in 12 months. Usable housing decreased by 40%. Rooms to be partitioned by wood screens. Kitchens. Refugees to be quartered by decree. In many towns, locals use the word Flüchtling like a curse. The newcomers carry resentment and loss in equal measure. They are told their suffering is recognized. They find themselves unwanted. Landlords learn they cannot say no. They invent reasons. They rent to relatives. Tension becomes normal. The Federal Republic will later build policy and identity around expulsion memory. It starts with a fight over a stove. Displaced persons are everywhere that Germans cannot look. Jewish survivors in barracks near Landsberg and Bergen-Belsen. Poles and Ukrainians who had been forced laborers and refused to go back. Soviet prisoners of war who fear their own state. Allied intelligence summaries report friction. German villagers resent DP markets. DPs resent German glances. American soldiers are told to keep DPs separate for their own safety. A Bavarian policeman in 1946 notes, residents complain that DPs have better food. They do sometimes, due to UNRA shipments. In the town, A rumor spreads that a German woman who sells bread to the DP camp is a traitor. She is spit on. She does not stop. She does not stop. She has hungry children and UNRA flour for a price. In these years, black Germans exist in the records with particular words. Before 1945, the Nazi state sterilized the so-called Rheinland-Bastarde, biracial children born after the First World War to German women and French colonial troops. After 1945, new children with darker skin appear in the Allied zones, called Besatzungskinder, occupation children, brown babies. Their mothers fill forms that ask the name of the father, his military unit, his race. On the forms, sometimes, it says Negro. It is a category. It becomes a destiny. August 1947. Wedding, Berlin. Erika gives birth to a son. She is 22. The birth certificate has a blank where the father's name could be. The midwife writes, unknown. The registry clerk writes, illegitimate. Erika names him Karl after her father, missing since Stalingrad. When he is born, the nurse says nothing about his skin. When she brings him to the communal kitchen, a neighbor says, When she brings him to the communal kitchen, a neighbor. American, she says, then not German. A city with rubble now has a child who is told he is rubble. This is a beginning and a sentence. The American army is segregated until 1948. In their barracks, black GIs sit in a mess hall apart. On patrol in Berlin, they are told to not fraternize. They do anyway. In the army's occupation reports, there are sentences about morale issues, about unauthorized relationships, about illegitimate children. There are memos urging married men to be careful. There are punitive transfers. There is shame, but not for everyone in the same direction. The German newspapers in 1947 and 1948 discuss brown babies in tones that change with the editor. Some pity the mothers, some condemn them, some speak of a problem. There are letters to the editor that equate skin color with immorality. There are also private letters that hold more complicated calculations. If I could find the American, he might help. He has money, one mother writes to a friend. He said he would come back. He did not. In a French sector file, a task force counts children by skin tone with bureaucratic precision. The mathematics of race is tallied by men at desks. 1948. Currency reform. The D-mark arrives in the western zones. Suddenly, the shop windows have goods again. Not enough and not for everyone, but enough to break the queues. Cigarettes are still useful. Cash is useful too. Cooks and clerks change pockets. The black market moves to new corners. The American airlift turns coal and flour into the language of rescue. Raisins fall from planes. Children wave. Even in the Soviet sector, people watch and calculate. Propaganda flows both ways. The radio says one thing and the stomach says another. The arithmetic of gratitude is not simple. Denazification fades. Re-employment rises. Former party members slip into offices where they had once filed orders stamped with the wrong eagle. The Spruchkammer courts are overloaded. They begin to close. Justice is widened into inner denazification and measured by less than trials. The Cold War begins in the meeting rooms and in the pages of school books. What you teach children becomes the map of your conscience. 1950. Karl is 3. He clings to Erika's apron. He is called names on the stairs by boys who have learned words at home. A social worker from the Municipal Welfare Office visits and writes in her report. The child is lively, intelligent, but will face difficulties due to appearance. Appearance is written like a diagnosis. Erika writes to the father care of the American unit number she memorized. The letter returns. She burns it in the stove because paper is fuel, and so is anger. East of the sector border, The new GDR proclaims itself anti-fascist. In 1952, it creates the Weltfestspiel der Jugend in Berlin, a youth festival that displays solidarity with anti-colonial movements. It prints posters of smiling African and Asian faces beneath slogans about peace. East German journals highlight lynchings in the American South and call the Federal Republic a haven for former Nazis. In their coverage, black bodies are deployed to shame the West. In the West, magazines like Stern and Quick publish photo spreads of German women with black GIs and brown babies. Some are tender, some are prurient. Bodies become battlegrounds. Propaganda is skin deep and deep as skin. Mabel Grammer, an African-American journalist, writes about the children in German orphanages and welfare homes. She advocates for adoption by black families in the United States. She arranges adoptions in the 1950s from Mannheim and Kaiserslautern. Files at the Bundesarchiv and in American adoption agencies tell of hundreds of children placed. Some birth mothers sign papers because they believe their children will have a better life in America. Some sign because they are told there is no place for their child in the village school. Some do not sign at all, and their children leave anyway under legal guardianship because of best interest. The mathematics of welfare counts money, color, and future probabilities. There is a sentence in a 1955 Christjugendamt report: Negro children will not be accepted by foster families in rural communities, relocation recommended. Karl stays. He goes to school near Leopoldplatz. On the first day, the teacher calls Roh, names a German. His is too. The teacher pauses when she sees him. Later, she will speak to the class about the world and its peoples. She will ask them to be polite. Later, at recess, he will learn the rap of knuckles on the back of his head. He will learn to run fast. In the West Berlin of the 1950s, a black German boy is a curiosity and a target. He is not alone. But they are not many. In oral histories recorded decades later, men and women like him describe a childhood of stares, questions, and the occasional hand extended in genuine friendship. They describe being called Mohrenkopf and Schokokid, terms in the market and the schoolyard. They described mothers who taught them to stand taller because hunched children attract more stones. The economy is changing. The Marshall Plan is a label on crates and a story in Sunday speeches. The Wirtschaftswunder is a photograph in a newspaper, a new kitchen, a Volkswagen, a factory gate with men in clean overalls. The mathematics of recovery is measured in coal tonnage and housing starts. It is the rebuilt Siemens plant in Siemensstadt. It is the new assembly line in Wedding. It is work, regular and not glamorous. Approval stamps replace ration coupons. The city breathes differently. 1954. The West German national team wins the World Cup in Bern. Wunder von Bern. The radio in a smoky bar in Turmstrasse shouts the names. The bar erupts. People hug. The memory of defeat is temporarily displaced by this unlikely victory. Historians will later argue that this is the moment a nation felt it could be proud again. The institutions do not. The school books of the 1950s, the Berufsschule manuals, the land history texts, prefer narratives of suffering, bombing, refugees, the lost East. They teach about Hitler as a madman and the Nazis as a handful of criminals. They do not teach the arithmetic of complicity. They do not teach Karl about the sterilizations. He will learn that at the library years later, when he reads footnotes that seem to refer to a different country. Meanwhile, across town and across the sector border, the East German state is building its own myth. The anti-fascist rampart, they will call the wall when it goes up, as if concrete can cleanse memory. In the 1950s, the East recruits actors of color for films at DIFA to show the solidarity of peoples. It also subjects black students from Africa to surveillance by the Stasi and propagates cartoons about American racism. A Ghanaian student in Leipzig, in a file released in the 1990s, notes being approached by a West German agent offering free travel. He refuses. The state documents this refusal as loyalty. In both Germanies, black bodies are signs to be interpreted. Karl finishes school at 14, then 15, then finally 16 because the years between were interrupted by illness and work. He gets a job at the municipal building office, sorting plans and stamping forms. The stamps read genehmigt or abgelehnt. He likes the order of it. Paperwork is a world where rules exist. Numbers can be checked. Things either fit or they do not. In the street, he is a man that strangers look at. In the archive room, he is a clerk. The files he touches tell a city's story. Building permits for new apartments in Märkisches Viertel, notices to landlords about occupancy requirements, the cold mathematics of cubic meters and head counts. He also handles denazification files being transferred to long-term storage. He sees names he knows. A teacher, a police sergeant, a neighbor who is now a supervisor in a factory. He reads in the file the category, Mitläufer. He finds a paper with signatures, 10 co-workers vouching. He feels something like understanding and something like nausea. These are the men who call him der Neger von der Bauershit under their breath. They are also the men who pay taxes that pay his salary. The new democracy rests on bargains you do not print on posters. East German propaganda denounces racial discrimination in the West. West German magazines print stories of good black GIs bringing chocolate to children. American PSAs in German show African-American soldiers in uniform voting. The Cold War uses faces. When two Afro-German girls are denied entry to a pool in Frankfurt in 1958, the story reaches the American press and embarrasses city officials. The mayor visits the pool. Cameras click. A new sign appears with race crossed out in red, as if a marker could erase habit. In East Berlin, Neues Deutschland prints the photograph and declares that socialism is colorblind. In the same year, in an East German dormitory, a Cuban exchange student files a complaint, insults in the tram. The Stasi opens a file. Files keep better order than streets. 13. August 1961. The morning is quiet in the western half of the city. Then trucks arrive in the east. Then soldiers. Then wire. Then concrete. The border is sealed overnight at lines that were never meant to be walls. The city becomes an island. The Allied commandants protest in measured tones. The citizens of West Berlin swarm to the border. They watch. They shout. Some jump. Some die. The mathematics of escape is reduced to windows, ropes, bullets. The mathematics of separation is quieter and more merciless. Parents on one side, children on the other, a job lost to a line, lovers parted by ideology and brick. Karl stands with others near Bernauer Strasse. He was born on this side, he works on this side, he watches men on the other side set posts into the ground. He scribbles a date and a line in his notebook. Here, the world puts concrete between us so it does not have to look at us together. He knows this is not simply about him, but he knows that his city is now a theatre where every identity is assigned a city. 1962. A West Berlin school textbook in history includes a new chapter, Demokratie lernen. It speaks of the Third Reich as a lesson. It refers to us as misled. It honors those who suffered in bomb shelters. It mentions Jewish neighbors in 2 pages. It does not mention sterilizations. It does not mention a law that prohibited marriage on racial grounds. It does not mention that the word neger is printed in the dictionary without comment. Children learn what their parents can tolerate. 1963. The Year of Speeches. King in Washington, Kennedy in Berlin. The summer light is bright on the wall. Carl stands in the crowd and listens. He watches people watching themselves be seen by the world. He hears the American talk about freedom, and Berliners talk back with ovations and tears. He remembers a hallway where a landlord said, "Not in my building," and another landlord said, "I cannot go against the law." He remembers that the job he got was because someone needed a number in a slot and he fit the slot. He writes in his notebook because his words have a place there. He does not shout them in the square because a man of his color shouting is a story someone else will write. His mother is in the crowd too. She hears nothing of democracy. She hears the engine of the car in which the American who left once rode away. She does not speak about that. She raises her hand with the rest and claps. She is still grateful for the butter she bought for cigarettes. She is still angry at herself. The arithmetic of survival is not a ledger you can close. Archival narrator voice. The elections in the Federal Republic produce cabinets that promise security. The basic law proves resilient. The Constitutional Court scolds excesses and defends rights. Former Nazis become civil servants again. The political police wear different suits. The Communist Party is banned in 1956. The GDR imprisons dissidents and calls them criminals. The West jails conscientious objectors until the laws change. The East trains border guards to shoot. The West trains policemen to keep order when students shout. In the 1960s, Black American soldiers stationed in West Germany watched the civil rights movement on television. Some find in Germany a reprieve from American prejudice. Others find familiar patterns in new languages. Their children in German towns are sometimes mascots, sometimes warnings. 1964. Carl is promoted to a grade that offers him a desk near a window. He stamps the same approvals and rejections. He drinks coffee in a break room where a colleague tells a story about a black man on the U-Bahn. The punchline is a grimace. Carl controls his face. He is good at this now. He asks the colleague for the folder that contains the measurements of apartments to be split to house refugees from the East who still make it West despite the wall. There is always another need. There is always another file. In this period, the Federal Republic begins to recruit Gastarbeiter, guest workers from Italy, then Spain, then Turkey. They will fill the factories and build the high-rises. West Germans will decide that some foreigners are acceptable if they leave. The official contracts say temporary. The apartments say permanent. The mathematics of belonging is a sum that never balances. Carl watches it happen from behind a desk that stamps permits for Turkish workers in wedding to sublet a room to cousins. He recognizes the looks on the faces when they wait in line. He recognized his own. East Germany broadcasts Der Schwarze Kanal, a propaganda program hosted by Karl Eduard von Schnitzler that ridicules Western television. It features clips about American race riots. It avoids mention of racial harassment of Vietnamese trainees in small towns. The West German ARD responds with documentary segments about the wall and political prisoners. Neither side is entirely lying. Neither side is entirely telling the truth. In both places, the files that matter are not on television. As the 1960s unfold, student movements in the West adopt Vietnam as a cause, colonialism as a target, and sometimes Black Americans as icons. In West Berlin, Rudi Dutschke gives speeches about imperialism. Posters carry the face of Chi and of Angela Davis. Some students assume that Carl will join them because he is black. Some assume he is a U.S. soldier. He is neither. He is West Berlin Civil Service, file number K1947-0822. He is civil. He is service. He is a man whose memories are more about ration cards and brick dust than about flags. He goes to a teach in about Vietnam and walks out when a speaker compares the German student struggle to a slave revolt. He thinks about the arithmetic of metaphors and who pays when numbers are misapplied. In a 1967 police report on disturbances after a student demonstration, a line reads, "Among the participants was several foreigners, one Negro male of German nationality observed on the edge of the crowd, not engaged." He is a detail in a file in which his race is still his first descriptor. He does not see the report. He suspects it exists. He is not surprised. He suspects it exists. There are voices in these years that are not recorded. In 1968, a letter arrives at the building office addressed to "An die Bauschicht," attention, Mr. K. It is written in a careful hand from a woman in Spandau. "I want to thank you for your help with the paperwork. It is rare to be treated properly in an office. May God bless you and your mother." The letter ends with, "I hope you will forgive the words people say." It is one page. It is folded with the rest into a file folder. Files keep such mercies for a time. The past does not stay buried. It surfaces in small ways. A school reunion in 1969 where a man boasts about his new job and someone asks quietly about the old one. He changes the subject. A trial in Frankfurt about Auschwitz that puts older men on the stand and younger men in the audience who hear details for the first time because their parents said, "We didn't know," for 20 years. A television program in 1979 that dramatizes a camp and shocks households that had had neighbors who did not return. Karl watches and thinks of the DP camp near Oranienburg, where he and his schoolmates were told never to go. He remembers that he went anyway and saw a fence and faces. He tells himself he did not understand at 10. He asks himself what he does not understand now at 32. The arithmetic of guilt continues to mutate. In the 1950s, guilt was avoided with work. In the 1960s, guilt was debated in seminar rooms and living rooms. In the 1970s, guilt was moved into curricula and memorials. It was still not a solved equation. For Black Germans, there was another column, a history in footnotes and sidebars, a present in headlines when convenient. Scholars will later write about Afro-German identity movements that formed in the 1980s. They will quote Me Ayim. They will publish anthologies. In the story that ends in 1963 and does not end there, those voices are not yet in the archive. They are forming in the margins. The Cold War continues to stage bodies. The GDR sends black athletes in exchange programs and shows them on television. The FRG points to its black US military jazz concerts and calls it openness. American military clubs in Berlin hire German bands. Some black GIs meet German women there and marry. Some are blocked by military superiors or German registry offices. The US Army desegregates. The FRG does not claim to have had to. The mathematics of claims and facts is untidy. Karl keeps his notebook. He writes dates and lines on buses, on benches at his desk when no one is watching. He writes about the first suit he could buy, new, not second-hand. He writes about a woman who asked if he had learned German in America. He writes about an East German border guard who looked at him as if he were a visiting dignitary when he approached the crossing in the brief period when West Berliners were allowed to visit. He writes about his mother's hands when she washed plates in cold water. He writes about the smell of coal and cabbage. He writes in the same hand as his mother wrote in 1945 when she wrote, "I do not sleep." He writes about denazification files. He writes, "The men who stamped people out now stamp approval for balconies." He writes, "The teacher who called me our African boys at parent night had been a party member. She later apologized for the nickname when she saw I did not laugh." He writes, "The mathematics of guilt is in the office file cabinet. The mathematics of hunger is in my mother's thin wrists. The mathematics of race is in the looks I count when I walk down the street. The mathematics of propaganda is that my face can be used by both sides to call themselves better than the other. One day in late 1963, after Kennedy is gone and the city is left with echoes, Carl opens a new file about a building project near the wall. He stamps genehmigt. He then closes the folder and takes out his notebook. He reads the first line from the summer. The Americans talk of freedom. I am both German and foreign, both victim and symbol. He writes under it, smaller. I am also a man who pays taxes and cooks potatoes and carries groceries and visits his mother on Sundays. The war after the war is the wear of living with facts that do not fit posters. In a small box he inherits when his mother dies years later, there are ration cards, a photograph of a black American in a uniform with no name, a letter returned by the Army Post, and a faded newspaper clipping from 1947. Rubble women. Clear 300,000 cubic meters. There is also a child's drawing of a plane dropping candy. He keeps the box in his closet. He keeps his notebook in a drawer at his desk. He keeps his voice level when people call him what he is not. He keeps his papers in order because that is the battlefield to which he was assigned. Bundesarchiv records show millions of questionnaires. Allied intelligence summaries list thousands of reports. Oral histories collect hundreds of voices. The files are cold and precise. The faces behind them are warm and entangled. A city of ruins became a city of glass and stone. A nation learned to look at some of its crimes and to look away from others. A black German man learned that the front line had been drawn through his body in a war of words and looks. 26 June 1963 remains in his notebook as a date that people remember for words shouted over a wall. He remembers it for a sentence he did not shout. He kept it because he could not spend it. He knew that, for him, the front line after 1945 ran through his memory and his paperwork, not across a battlefield.